Hey guys, welcome to part 5 of the design patterns tutorial series. So before moving forward, let me do a recap of what we've done until now. We have the backend simulator package that has the existing code of our, let's say, online shop, and then the logger is where we have our log file helper. And then in our events collector, this is what we created throughout the video series. We have our events package where we defined our event classes. So we have a base class event, and then we have a concrete class for each of the event types. And then in our exception package, we just have our invalid event exception. And in our event factory, we have the event factory that creates an event object out of the input, and we made this a singleton. And lastly, we created our events collector. So this is like our main method for our events collector component. This will collect the log data and convert it to an event, and then handle the event. So when an event comes in here in the log file helper, we pass it to our events collector, and when we get an invalid event exception, we print out the data, because this means that it's not an event and the log file helper has to handle it itself. So all events that we collect essentially get in here, and we print out. This is a temporary printout showing that we actually collected the event. Now the next thing we want to do is we want to now look at the requirements of our manager, like what have we to do with the events. So if you recall from the previous videos, this is our task that we were assigned to do. So we need to keep the existing functionality of logging the events. We need to save all events to a JSON file, and we need to periodically display statistics about events. Now, we don't want to just go in here and do all that, because it's a violation of good design, violation of single responsibility. We want to have these things handled separately and architect our code in such a way that we can support that. So if we analyze these requirements, it's like if we have a class for logging an event, if we have a class for saving an event to a JSON file, and a class for gathering statistics, essentially each of these classes has to get a notification when an event occurs. They need to know when an event occurs. So this is exactly what the observer design pattern is meant for. So these classes are going to observe the event. They are going to, and then that, and a class would be responsible for notifying them when there is an event. So let us look at the UML diagram of the observer design pattern. So the observer design pattern is something like this. So this observer is a interface, and then we have concrete observers. So our console logging, so this would be an event observer, and then this is like the console logging part. This is the saving to JSON part. So each of those is a concrete observer. Each of those needs to be notified when there's an event. And then this subject refers to like our events publisher. So whenever there's an event, this subject would notify all of the observers. And this class has a capability of, you can register an observer to this class, or you can unregister an observer from this class, and then you can notify the observers. So this is as if it had a collection, and whenever the collection changes, it notifies the observers. In our case, we don't save a collection, but whenever an event occurs, we just notify the observers. So we will have a slight modification to this, but the pattern is the same. So let us get into implementing this pattern in our application. I will start by creating a package for these classes. Let's call it event notification, since it deals with the notifications of the events. First, I will create the event publisher. So this is the equivalent of the subject class that we just saw in our UML diagram. So our event publisher will have register, unregister, and notify. And what we need to register and unregister is the observer itself. So we need to create the event observer. And this will be an interface which will have only one method, notify event occurred. So the event observer is something that can observe events. Now in our event publisher, we will have three methods. Register event observer, unregister event observer, and publish event So for our register event observer, we will be taking in an event observer. Similar thing for the unregister event. Now what we need to do is create a set of event observers. Or to make it more general, even a collection would work. I like using a set for this case because when we do unregister event, we don't want it to look through the whole list. We just want it to find it in O1 time. So set is the most efficient way to do this. And as we can imagine, we wouldn't have two same objects being registered in here. So it is totally safe to use a set. So in our register events, we will add the event observer to our event observer list, and in unregistered event we will remove it from the list. Lastly, in publish event, we will just loop through each observer and notify them that an event occurred. So this class is all we have for our subject class. It's quite neat. We have a register, unregister, and we maintain a set of event observers. Whenever an event is published, we just notify each of them that an event occurred. The next thing we want to do is let this publisher know every time there's an event. So going back to our events collector, every time there's an event, right now it calls handle event, but we want it to go to the publisher. So we're going to create an instance of our publisher. And here, instead of calling handle event, we're going to go event publisher dot publish event. I'm going to take this out. So notice that this is null right now. We can call a static method called get configure and get so this is a private method that would configure our publisher and return it. So everything that goes with regards to the settings of this publisher, like what kind of observers we want to register, turning them on and off, everything can be controlled by just this method. So right now we just want to create a new event publisher, and later on we will be adding all our event observers that we need here, and we will return our event publisher, and we need to make this static. So that's all for this video. In the next video we will create our observers and register them.